Hello, I'm Regina Botros, and this is Backstage, where we talk with the who's who on stage, in dance, comedy and performing arts, speaking with the leading theatre makers of our times and how they came to the stage and what drives them and inspires them. I am joined by Kate Britton. She is the artistic director of the Performance Space. The Performance Space is in their 41st year. Wow. Kate Britton is a curator and arts manager with more than 10 years experience in festivals, experimental and interdisciplinary performance and visual and public art. She's held artistic and festival director positions with Art Month Sydney and This Is Not Art Festival, and curatorial programming and producing roles with Sydney Opera House, Campbelltown Arts Centre, FBI, Underbelly Arts and Calder Public Art Projects. And she's done so much more, including a PhD in aesthetics and participatory art. Wow, I'm very curious to know what that is about. But she's here to talk about the Liveworks Festival, which is on till Saturday. There's so much jam-packed into this. Actually, I think it goes over to Sunday because there are panels and all kinds of things happening. So, Kate, welcome to Stages.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. So where do we start with this? I mean, let's just sort of set the scene. The Performance Space really kind of looks at, what would you describe as their aim?
Look, I'd say, as you said, we've been around for 41 years now, and the organisation was first started in 1983 by a group of artists and performance makers that essentially couldn't find anywhere else that wanted to show the style of performance that they were making. So things that didn't kind of fit naturally into the black box of the theatre or the white cube of the gallery, but kind of sat in those interdisciplinary, experimental, kind of murkier spaces. And I think, that's really the sort of heart and the genesis of the organisation and what we really continue to do today. So it's about supporting experimental practice, and it's about finding a kind of home and a stage for artists that are making work that kind of pushes the boundaries a bit and doesn't necessarily fit on the main stage.
Yeah, it doesn't kind of, like you say, the box of this is how you describe it. But having said that, how do you describe some of the ways? Where should we start? I mean,
we always like to say they're indescribable, but, I think the Liveworks program is a sort of pretty condensed offering of theatre, dance, music. We've got a big Saturday night party curated by the amazing menagerie artist Joel Bray, and kind of works everything in between, really. We've got an amazing public space exhibition. So I think the genres and art forms that you might see are really diverse, and what the kind of linking thread through all of them is, I think, a kind of invitation to the audience to engage with the work in a sort of slightly different way than they may normally. An invitation to kind of come into a space that may not look exactly like you expect it to, or where you might kind of be encountering ideas that seem a little bit kind of challenging or unusual.
So yes. What are some of the ideas? Because, I mean, the thing about theatre or the thing about anything really presented on the stage is sort of reflects the energy of a time and our times and what artists are really kind of exploring. So what are some of the things that are being explored at the moment? Yeah,
look, I think whatever way you look at it, the world at the moment is in a pretty interesting juncture. I think we're sort of really in this period of polycrisis almost, and it feels often, I think, really hard to know how to even navigate it and where to kind of place one's energies, particularly if you are sort of looking around and feeling like, look, this is not the world I want to live in, and I want to be able to kind of make change or take action. And I think that's a real thread to the festival this year. I think a lot of the artists are kind of thinking about, what power we do have as individuals, what are the spheres of kind of life that we can make change, both for ourselves and for others. And a lot of that is very much about the kind of immediate communities and the people around us, like how we practice care, how we look after each other in community, how we come together in community. and how we kind of actually, in the course of navigating our everyday lives, so often are making decisions and are sort of affecting change and having these sort of micro impacts, and the ways in which those can ripple out and really kind of start to kind of flow on in bigger and bigger ways across communities and across society, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that is really there. And so a lot of it's about family. A lot of it's about, how we kind of what sorts of spaces we come together to sort of transcend our everyday, or, like what are the things that we're ignoring or overlooking in our lives as well, and how can we kind of attend to them?
One of the things that immediately pops out is the crying room, for example. Like, what is this work? The crying room exhumed, I should say.
Yes, so the Crying Room Exhumed is a really incredible piece of, I'm going to call it theatre, for lack of a better word at this point, I think, by the amazing Naarm-based artist Marcus Ian Mackenzie. Crying Room Original was actually an online work that Marcus produced through the kind of COVID lockdown years. And Crying Room Exhumed is a bit of a sort of follow-on that draws on this original work and brings it into the kind of theatre space, but does that in a really unusual way that still kind of weaves a lot of this digital narrative through the show. The content is a kind of incredibly virtuosic, sort of performative, wild sort of trip through the subconscious almost, as Marcus kind of unpacks his experience of losing his brother and the sort of grief that he has navigated with that, and the sorts of the ways in which I guess we cope with grief, both personal and sort of larger. And I think the Crying Room title is a reference to the spaces that they have in the cinema or in theatres, or I think in churches sometimes as well, which are the little like glass rooms where you're supposed to go to be emotional or to cry if you need to. So I think, this sort of playing with this idea, I think particularly in Western culture, that emotions and that this sort of grief process is something we tend to put in a little box and sort of keep away from the public domain. And what does it mean when that sort of starts to seep out and spill over? So it's an incredibly emotional work, actually, but really a joy to watch. It's very kind of fun at the same time. It's got a lot of complexity, and there's a really fantastic finale that you just have to see in person, because it's a bit of a reveal and a bit of a surprise moment, and it's a magical kind of experience.
So a lot of the times the works that you have or the artists that you have worked a lot with the performance space. Who are some of the other artists returning?
One of the things I love about being with P-Space is that we do tend to form long-term relationships with the artists we work with and present their work over a number of projects and over a number of years, which is really beautiful. So we've got Luke George coming back to the festival this year with his incredible work Fell, which is really just so sublime. Luke's an artist that we have had kind of in development with an early version of this work over the last couple of years, but he's also presented quite a few works with us in the past, including Hundreds and Thousands with Daniel Koch in 2002, which is a really gorgeous work with a whole seating bank full of houseplants that they were performing with and for.
The image for Fell is like a cut tree.
Yes.
So you're talking about this room full of trees, and now this sort of evolution, it kind of somehow talks to that.
It absolutely does. And I think that's what's so nice about being able to present the work over quite a long time. So Luke grew up in Tasmania, and he engages a lot with these kind of ecological themes, with the sort of, and this work particularly engages with that logging kind of industry down there. He grew up on the West Coast, so it's particularly sort of affected by that industry and that commerce. And I think this work it's incredibly beautiful. So the log, what you're seeing in the promo image, is sort of Luke in this kind of balancing position atop a log that's rigged from some ropes. And so much of the performance is actually about reaching this sort of balance with the log. The log is exactly equal in weight and height to Luke's body. And so he kind of uses it to perform this really delicate dance, I guess, in some ways, of trying to come into a state of equilibrium and balance with this inert and yet actually very active kind of log. And it's such a simple action, but the image is so strong and so striking and speaks so effectively, I think, to that kind of precarity that we have with our natural world and the kind of delicate balancing act of trying to continue to exist in harmony with it, hopefully. And it's just like I saw it late last year in NAM for the first time, the finished work, after we'd been involved in its development. And it was just like you could have heard a pin drop in the theatre. It's such a sort of intense and very like tense, I guess, experience watching it. You can sort of see the sweat, dripping from Luke's face, and it's really effective. And there's been some kind of additional elements that are being brought into the work for Carriage Works. So it uses the space here really beautifully as well.
Oh, so many layers and levels to the work. So, I mean, even the couple that we've spoken about so far. What about Leftover Market? That looks frightening.
Leftover Market, yes.
Deep as well.
Oh, they all are.
Yes.
Pinwen Su is an incredible Taiwanese artist that so it's the Australian premiere of Leftover Market coming to Liveworks. It premiered at the Taipei Performing Arts Festival a little earlier this year, and it's a really kind of quirky, fun, cheeky sort of movement-based work that takes this idea that's quite pervasive in Mandarin-speaking cultures that unmarried women over the age of, I think it's 27, are kind of considered leftover in society, and it's sort of superfluous to use because they're not fulfilling their destinies, I suppose, as wives and mothers. And I think, Pinwen has a long history of making work about gender and his gender journey in particular, as a sort of queer artist and a trans artist. And this is kind of an extension of that. It builds on that to look at, okay, well, there's this idea that, women over a certain age are kind of redundant and useless to society. Like, what else is it that our kind of very economically driven, sort of capitalist society might consider superfluous to, or useless or valueless? And what are the things we value, and what other kind of structures and ideas that are informing those choices and those kind of the value systems that are ascribed to things and to people. And, I think that's sort of part of this narrative of like, how can we kind of dismantle these structures that we live in and regain some kind of individual power? So I think this work I really love because it's a sort of so looking at these kind of overlooked or undervalued elements of our society and kind of actually revealing the sort of power and the agency that that they really have.
Or luck, as the case may be.
It's actually all very fun work, I feel like it's sort of like I'm always find myself talking about the ideas and all that, like the juicy sort of stuff, but I do want to say that it's actually all very fun and enjoyable as well to watch. And the artists are all really generous, like they want people to come in and have a good time and take something away with them.
Absolutely. And it feels like we are going to take something away. Let's talk about the dance party, like this. Yes. Talking about fun.
Yes, Brolga. So we often have a big sort of Saturday night celebration moment at Liveworks, and this year it is Brolga, curated by the Wiradjuri artist Joel Bray, as I said. The Brolga bird is quite an important figure in a lot of First Nations mythology from different countries around so-called Australia. And although a lot of the individual stories themselves have kind of different elements and different kinds of narratives, the Brolga bird figure is often kind of a little bit sort of queer or a little bit gender divergent or a little bit kind of rubbing up against sort of society's expectations in that way, or is sort of celebrated as being a kind of gorgeous dancing sort of outsider figure. And so has been kind of adopted by a lot of First Nations people, including Joel, as a bit of a kind of symbol of the queer community within First Nations spaces. And Brolga is a kind of joyful celebration of that and that story and those communities. So it features a kind of central work that unfolds in the middle of the kind of party that is a Jolbray dance piece. And then there's incredible pop-up performers that sort of, come and go throughout the night, and some really incredible and fun DJs as well. And we're thrilled to have a 2 a.m. license for that party. So we get to stay open a bit later and really settle in.
And you also have a whole lot of panels which are free, a lot of them, at least from what I could tell, on Sunday.
All free.
All free, yes. Yeah. So what are some of what's your highlight? We'll pick.
Look, we've got a lot going on. I'm really excited, actually. In addition to the panels, as part of the public programs, we've got a really incredible artist from the UK, Krishna Itza, who's a theatre maker and a kind of comedian and a writer. They write on sex education, the show, and they've recently done one of Hannah Gadsby's Netflix comedy specials. So they're working in these really exciting spaces, and they'll be on site Friday afternoon and Saturday morning, essentially throwing the doors open to their working process and allowing people to kind of come in and engage with them. They're making a work around their journey to start a family with their partner, and kind of what it means to be starting family at the moment, and queer family in particular. And also working with their mother to kind of unpack her experience of having a child and kind of, losing that child through a hospital sort of system in India. And so kind of these two parallel experiences of fairly potentially horrific or traumatizing engagements with the medical world, I guess, both for queer people and also for women in the past. And I think that program I'm really excited about. And then it kind of leads into a panel that is happening on Sunday morning that really unpacks how family, and looking at different family models, and looking at our really kind of intimate spaces and modes of care unfold across a few of the works in the festival.
So you're saying it's like you can go in and just watch them at work, how they're creating.
Yeah, they're sort of keen to engage with people. So a part of their sort of methodology of building this show is to connect, particularly with queer community and their parents, or with queer people who are parents, or people that are kind of working or thinking in adjacent sort of fields and areas. And a part of that, so they're kind of keen to engage people in discussion. They're keen to kind of gather stories from other people, and also to be sort of testing out ideas and testing out their methodologies, and kind of starting to craft a work in kind of real time in residency with us here. And so I think, it's a really rare opportunity actually to get to come inside a kind of process like that as an audience. And I think that's a really exciting and kind of generous offer. And then the panel on Sunday afternoon at 1:00 on family. Krishna will also be on, as will Hosey, who's making a work in this year's festival, Thunder Bloom Live, that also stars his mother, and Jessie McCall, the choreographer, whose work, The Bloom, which is an incredible choreographic piece and a really exquisite work, is really around kind of ideas of kind of motherhood, and queer motherhood particularly, as actually this sort of radical rupturing into the kind of fabric of society. And that, I think those experiences of women or people with wombs, I suppose, often I get relegated as some sort of, it's a domestic thing, it's not appropriate subject matter for the ground stage, but that actually, in conversation with Jess, she's like, I really can't think of anything that has shifted my life and the lives of the people closest to me more radically than the experience of motherhood. And that actually, is there a kind of more intense and sort of life-altering thing to do than to create and bring life into the world, and to sort of shepherd those tiny humans. I'm really excited for that conversation. I think there's something it seems to be something that artists all over the world are kind of turning to at the moment. This sort of both ways of actively working with and engaging with family in the making of work, but also sort of just thinking through, what does family mean? Like what are the systems in which we kind of structure and execute and live through, I guess, our care for one another, and the sort of those most intimate kind of spheres that. Yeah, so I think it's really kind of juicy, fertile stuff, and I'm excited to bring those particular artists into conversation with each other as well in that panel.
Well, you can't help but think that that is the sort of the micro of the macro, the world that we're, first influenced by, can't help but make us influence the world, or, sort of reflective in those ways as well. So last question, what is a PhD in aesthetics and participatory art? Well, I know you've done a thesis, so one sentence.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Don't ever ask a PhD student to summarize their PhD in one sentence. No, look, I mean, in some ways it feels like a lifetime ago, but I was incredibly lucky. I had the opportunity to work on a really beautiful kind of long-term community filmmaking project with a university in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, the University of Goroka, that was around kind of co-producing films with particular communities throughout the highlands about the experiences of different people in their community that were living with HIV and AIDS, which is still and remains a kind of source of quite a lot of discrimination and stigma in some of those societies. So I think the kind of intention of the project was to produce these films to kind of tell stories of people that are living really positively with their community, that are on the antiretroviral treatments, and sort of modeling, I guess, those kind of best practice health survival techniques with a view to kind of reducing some of that discrimination. And I suppose what I focused on in supporting that project from afar and also over there, and in writing about it, was the power that art really does have to bring people together and to kind of generate a conversation that can change the way that you see something. So I suppose I still, 10 years later or however long, fundamentally believe that very strongly. And I think it does play out across the programs that I'm now, also very privileged to be working on.
Absolutely. It totally ties in. Kate Britton, thank you so much for joining me to talk about the Liveworks Festival.
Yeah, no, we hope to see you here.
Kate Britton there. What a festival, what an experience. So much to see. Look, we only touched the iceberg. There's so many panels and so many performances just this week. So hop onto the Performance Space website, playing at the Carriage Works in their theatres.